So, for those of you who don't know Lennaert, aka is Jeff, to his close friends, Lennaert's one of our roadies, and he was a roadie last year.
Yep.
But also spoke.
Yeah.
So he was roadieing while trying to calm pre-talk nerves and stuff, which we all get, right?
Yep.
And then this year again, he's roadieing and speaking.
Yeah.
And working as well.
That's pretty good.
That's
more work than we've done.
Yeah. Hats off to you, man. Hats off to you. But no, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this because we talk a lot about this kind of stuff, like us privately. Vulnerability disclosure, the do's and don'ts. It's time to tell literally everyone how to do it properly. And I'm really looking forward to this. So, Lennaert, please take it away.
Thank you, Scott. And like you said, I will be talking about the do's and don'ts of vulnerability disclosure. But I'm going to start off with a quick small introduction. Who am I? Well, I'm Lennaert, and I like to press buttons randomly, and sometimes funny things happen. And if these things happen, then I try to disclose them to the people that can do something with them, and I try to do so responsibly, of course. In my working life, I'm a triage officer at Zerocopter, which is a managed bug bounty platform. We also manage coordinated vulnerability policies for our clients. So I see a lot of disclosures coming in and reports. A lot of them are really good, but I also see some common mistakes people make, various funny things. And from that role, I can really talk to seeing a lot of them, but I also do a lot of them. I'm the research coordinator at the Dutch Institute for Vulnerability Disclosure. You might have heard this name in the media last year when we were in the news a lot around the massive ransomware attack that happened on Kaseya's software. Researchers from our team had already identified some of these vulnerabilities, and we were in the process of disclosing these to Kaseya and working with them to see them resolved. But sadly, our efforts were not enough, and we didn't manage to get everything fixed before the attack happened. But we did do a lot of disclosures with this team to Kaseya and to other companies. We try to keep the internet safe that way. I have a small disclaimer for this talk. There might be some mature language, and I really want to stress that when I say a hacker, I do mean a good guy and not a cyber criminal. And the responsible disclosure starts, of course, with finding a bug. You might have been hacking on one of the known platforms. These have many bug bounty platforms that you can legally hack on and then disclosure report. But sometimes you also find something when you're just using the internet, or like me, trying to buy shoes, and then you put funny things into search boxes and funnier things happen. And then the next thing after finding something is starting to figure out who to disclose this to. Sometimes that's really clear, like when people have a security.txt, or they have a beautiful link to a responsible disclosure policy in their footer, or sometimes you simply Google the company or organization you want to disclose to, and you find a link to the right place to disclose. But it's not always this easy, sadly. Sometimes you have to do a little company OSINT, like you go onto LinkedIn, try to find members of their security team, and try to figure out who can take your report and actually take action to it. And if that doesn't work, you have to go to their customer support or email their info address, and then usually you get someone that does not have a clue what you're trying to tell them, or that thinks they're getting scammed, or they just won't respond at all. And then your last resort can be to try to get some attention for it publicly, but this is also going to probably get to the social media team and not to someone who really understands a lot about cybersecurity. So these options are far less ideal, and I would want every company to have a security TXT or responsible disclosure policy listed on their website, because disclosing like this always takes a lot more effort and makes it a lot harder on researchers to get attention for the vulnerability they found. But when you finally figure out who and where to disclose to, you're going to have to send them a message. You could send a message like this. Simply says, "Hi, I found a vulnerability. Please kindly reply back to me," which is weird because he's submitting it on a vulnerability disclosure program already. So he's in the right place, but there's zero disclosure, zero information, just mail me. This is not going to work. This is not going to get you a good response. I can promise you that. The same for these messages. They're both what we call bag bounties. Like they literally mail the owner of a website, "Hey, I have something for you. Will you give me money?" This looks like a scam. It is often a scam, and you should not be trying to disclose things like this. But when you're disclosing and making your message, make sure it doesn't look like this, and you're trying to do your best, then you want to get a sense of urgency across, because what you found is obviously very important. It's urgent. And you want them to fix it. So you're going to urge them to take action, do something. And of course, you want to help them out and give them a lot of information. So you put a lot of links to information in. I don't know if anyone recognizes these points, but if you've taken any phishing training, you'll have red flags flying up right now at urgent, take action, and a lot of links in it. So don't do this either. That's going to look like phishing. People won't take good to it. It might even get filtered out by spam filters if you're disclosing via email. So how should you do it? You should send them a clear description of the issue, tell them what's wrong, include steps to reproduce it, because obviously they want to test that the vulnerability you're disclosing is actually present, and you want to highlight the impact, why they should care, what's this going to do to a business. And if you have any idea about how they could fix it, please obviously do include those as well. A good example of a good message is this one. It's from Cyber Gibbons, who happens to work at one of the sponsors of this event. And he writes a nice email about an SQL server being open and passwords being disclosed in error messages. And all around, the message is good. He explains what they could do to fix it, what the impact is, how it happened, how he found it. And the response, however, is less good. They're emailing him back with, "You send us an email, we were not interested in discussing the contents, and as far as we're concerned, the matter is closed." Don't respond like this to a responsible disclosure. You're being really rude and annoying to a person that's trying to help you. As you can see, the researcher in this case is also fairly annoyed at the arrogant response he's receiving. So no, this is not how you should be responding to a responsible or coordinated vulnerability disclosure. You also should not respond by suing the person that's trying to help you. You'd think this is really easy to not sue the person that's trying to help you. Like in this case, Rob found some usernames and passwords. I believe it was in a GitHub repository, and he disclosed that to the organization, and they responded with threats of legal action. So yeah, don't sue your researcher. Seems easy, and we found out earlier this month that it wasn't easy. Another person doing a disclosure to an organization gets, in this case, investigated by the police because he's trying to help. And in this case, there was a lot of laughter about if there was even a hack, because all they did was inspect the page that the web server was sending back to their browser. So yeah, there was hardly any hacking, and he was just trying to help, but now gets investigated by the police. Another way not to respond to a disclosure is this one. And this is what you often see what happens when it gets to customer support, instead of someone that understands the system and understands cybersecurity. And they respond with, "It looks like you're trying to add JavaScript in the name of your gallery. Don't do that. There is no XSS. Just don't put JavaScript in that field. There is no issue there." Obviously, not what you want as a researcher either in the response. So what should you do when responding? First of all, don't panic. You're not under attack. Someone's trying to help you. Don't ignore the report either. So respond, send a message, get in touch with the person that's trying to help you. Don't sue your reporter, as we've covered before. Don't make them sign NDAs. They're helping you voluntarily. So don't put all kinds of paperwork and contracts under their nose. Communicate a timeline back on how long you think this might take to fix you, and let them know that you're working on it, and inform them once the issue is actually fixed. But also, people that are reporting sometimes don't communicate too well. We can see here, this is a person disclosing something on Uber's bug bounty platform. And it was out of scope, so it got closed, and it was okay with that. And then apparently they closed as not applicable and deducted his points for it, which made him less than happy. And he responds with, "You bleep, bleep, bleep," and lots of swear words. and he ends his message calling them the rudest thing he could think of when insulting Uber, and he calls them bloody taxi drivers. This is not how you should be communicating to anyone. If you're trying to help, someone will not want to listen to you after you communicate like this. There's more good examples of this. The HackerOne disclosed reports are sometimes a gold mine for good laughs about this. Here someone found etc password was exposed, or they thought so, and the Reddit staff responds with, no, it's not exposed, this is a joke, it's a fake passwd file as a joke, and none of the other endpoints under etc will respond with anything. But instead of communicating and reading what he's being told, he just tells them, but the link works. That's clearly a case of not reading what you're being told, not engaging in communication, and trying to understand another point of view. We'll see the same in this next report. He's reporting an XSS, which is normally a very valid bug. I love hunting for XSS. But he includes steps of reproduction that are questionable. He opens the dev tools and types in an alert. Yeah, that will absolutely work to pop an alert, but there's no actual XSS here. And later on, he doubles down, to use a phrase that Scott loves, and he asks the poor person working there, are you new to this job? Very rude. Again, not working with the other party when you're trying to disclose a vulnerability. Well, you should be trying to work together when reporting something and resolving it. So how should you communicate? Clearly, remain professional, give clear answers to questions asked, and read what people are actually asking or telling you. So respect their decisions. Sometimes you might have a valid bug, but a business will decide not to act upon it because there's no real impact for them. And this can be a valid decision. And if that decision is made, respect it. And once a bug is resolved, don't go begging. If you want to get paid for your bugs, hunt on bug bounty platforms or programs that have rewards. If you're doing coordinated or responsible vulnerability disclosure, then you're not guaranteed a reward. It's nice to get something, but don't respond like this. No bounty please messages. But for a company, once it's resolved, it is nice to reward the person helping you, and you don't have to give them tons of money, especially on coordinated vulnerability disclosure, but a place on a wall of fame or a nice t-shirt are always very welcome. And I believe you should allow to disclose publicly after it's been resolved. I think it's important because reporters want to show off their work, which is why a Hall of Fame is always nice, because for a lot of people reporting things, the things they found act in a sense like their CV. And we don't want others to need to reinvent the wheel. So disclose publicly, and we can all learn from each other's mistakes. And keep the internet better and safer that way. And you tell the world you're taking security seriously. If you show that you received the report, acted on it, and made your product better. And it's a lot nicer to be saying we take the security serious when telling people you fixed an issue than when you have to use that phrase in a data breach notification. If you want to know more about this, how you should run your responsible disclosure policy, or how you should be reporting, and a bit of guidelines that you can keep to, the OWASP project has a really nice cheat sheet about this. And you can go there, check it out. URLs in the slides. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions? You can reach me on Twitter or in the Discord if you have any questions.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I know we have a lot of chats about vulnerability disclosure, and actually we kind of disagree on a few points.
Ooh, that's nice.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah. I'm pro dump it on the proof of concept on Twitter for likes and shares.
Likes and followers.
Likes and shares.
Very fast strategy.
I've been on both sides, and I can understand from both sides the challenges, but I've also seen the sides where you just don't get the response, and there's nothing more frustrating than facing something like that.
No, you're absolutely right. I do occasionally. I don't do it for a bug bounty platform. I don't do it for any particular reason other than, hey, I'm bored late at night, I'm going to have a look at this. Oh, I found this thing. Kind of like when you just want to buy shoes and you, oh, all right, I better email them about this. And the responses I get back to a pretty standard. I mean, some of the stuff I've run past you first going, does this sound okay? Is this legit? And the responses you get back are anything from no comment and they fix it, no comment and they don't fix it, or see you in court. And you're just like, okay, there must be some middle ground. But like, I can imagine they're dealing with A, big bounty, as you mentioned, B, dicks that are just like, hey, you've got a problem with this. No, we don't. Yeah, you do. No, we don't. So, you know, it's like,
you need to pay up before I give you the details.
Oh,
that one's horrible.
Spicy.
That one always gets such a bad response from me. Like, that's not how it works. But yeah, I definitely believe there's rules for both sides, on both on how to disclose and definitely on how to respond as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
It highlights that there's a communication breakdown. Like, we need to get better at communicating. Like, we're really good at the tech stuff, but our communication skills are shit. Like, we need to find that middle ground to be able to translate from tech to anybody, and from anybody to tech, so that we all understand each other and can talk the same damn language.
And indeed, what you say, understanding each other. I think a lot of people report something, and for them it's a huge find, and they feel like it's absolutely the most important thing in the world at that point. But for a company, they might have a million other things going on. So have a little bit of empathy and try to understand where the other person is coming from.
Yeah, context is a massive, massive, massive part of it as well. Like, if you're emailing them in the middle of an audit, like, they're not going to respond to you for probably a couple of weeks or months. Yeah. And they might be spicy when they do respond. Like, if you email them in the middle of a pen test, they're probably going to think it's a pen test, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, so a couple of people dropped some questions in the chat. Thanks, Rag, for dropping a massive Charles Dickens novel of a question in the chat. So I'm going to attempt to try and read this now. So Rag said, question number 1, I noticed your list of finding points of contact to disclose a vulnerability. Do you think the ISACs and ISAOs have a place within their sectors as middlemen for finding points of contact at organizations where that trust relationship already exists to connect researchers with the correct people within the potentially impacted organizations? That's a mouthful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
great question.
Yes, is the short answer. It can really help. But I think it might be hard to advertise who you can disclose to, because not all these organizations cover their entire branch, not all companies might be connected to them, so it's not as easy. But yeah, if you cover a branch and you can take vulnerability reports for companies in a branch, then absolutely advertise it and be clear on who you can and can't contact. I definitely believe there's a role for this here.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties in nicely with the point that Troy was making earlier about this kind of unified presence and unified sort of mindset, unified, I hate to say it, but cyber laws almost, and cyber rules and cyber guidance globally.
And also, it's good because you're now talking to folks that are part of the community, so they can give you further guidance and mentorship. But also, when you get a call from an ISAC or a national agency like the NCA, they'll have vetted that and they'll have identified that this is actually an issue too, right? So getting that validation of your results, of what you think you found from another respected third party, and then you can essentially do what they did to SolarWinds, which was when Mandiant got hacked. They investigated, and then they went to Microsoft to validate, we're seeing this, look at what we've discovered. Okay, now let's both kind of approach everyone, like every government agency, and say, we need to talk to these guys. Yeah. And it makes it, a lot more, I think, of a better sort of system when, the work is validated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I think a big problem with this seems to be that there's a lot of smaller companies that do have a presence on the internet, but are just simply not covered by any of these organizations. They're so small that they don't really have the contact points, so they'll just get missed. I think you're really going to see that The bigger companies, the richer companies, definitely have their cybersecurity house in order to a certain extent, and the smaller, like small medium business, are just gonna get missed for a whole while before we get this right.
No, I totally agree. Rag has asked a second question, but before I get to that question, Jenny has dropped in the chat, the existence of a security.txt file is often a good indication that a company, or at least one individual in the company, takes security seriously. Wish more companies did this simple step. I actually had a chat recently, I think you know about this one, Lennaert, but I had a chat recently with someone, and it was trying to convince an organization to put security.txt into place. No one understood it apart from this one person, and it got to the point where it was like forgiveness rather than permission, because it's important, and people didn't take it seriously. They didn't understand it, and they thought it was useless.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Oh, sorry, Lennaert.
I think that creates a really dangerous scenario of that one person leaving, security.txt still being there, and people trying to get in touch, not getting responses, getting only more frustrated.
Yeah, and the other thing to add with security tax in your example is a lot of organizations, especially smaller companies, they have no clue about security. That's not their fault. Yeah. It's like trying to ask us, well, why didn't you fix my car outside that's using a modern engine? We'll go, well, why should I know anything? We have to start engaging with people and explaining it to them and get them to understand the importance and value of it, rather than you have to have a security.txt file. Why? Oh, you just have to have it. Like, we need to explain the why part, and that's one thing I think we often fail to do, is because we know it, we assume everyone else knows.
Yeah, and I think as a community, and that you can do a lot more aftercare as well, because you can disclose a vulnerability, but if you're not telling them how to fix it or helping them fix it, a small company that doesn't understand security is just not going to get it.
There's a really interesting point about the person leaving, though. So I have seen that before, where you can find legacy stuff, and 2, 3, 5 years ago that person cared, but they're gone.
This is my opinion is that the security TXT needs to be managed by risk and compliance, not actually the security department. Because the security department won't want to engage. It's like, no, we're protecting our perimeter. We don't want to talk about this issue. But governance and risk and compliance might actually pick it up.
The problem with that, though, Sean, the problem with that is that the kind of companies that Lennaert's talking about here don't have either a security or a governance and risk department. So it's about a broader visibility within the organisation, maybe even outside of security. Yeah. In your IT team, even, that are doing your mainstream, your 365 stuff. We have a thing, it's called security.txt, and it signposts researchers to tell us about a problem that they found. So it doesn't matter who owns it, the information can still find somebody within the organisation. The fact that they can't fix it, but they can go find somebody to fix it, then it works reasonably well.
Top tip.
Sean.
If you're going to put an email address in your security.txt, make it an alias, so it's not assigned to an individual. So if that individual leaves, you just simply change that whoever's in that group and that email alias.
Yeah, I find sales at company is a good one.
But you end up in the situation, if you do end up sending it to sales at or info at or contact at, you end up in the was it Kathy or Kate at T-Mobile Australia? Or my infamous bout with BT. Don't change your DNS or it will explode.
One that you can use in that case is their DPO, because with GDPR a lot of companies do advertise a privacy policy and a DPO email address, and you might find someone. It shouldn't be their problem, because the whole privacy thing should be their thing, but they might actually remotely care about security.
Yeah, they'll actually give a shit. So
possibly, especially if there's sensitive data behind that website.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Then they're gonna give a shit.
Well, you shouldn't be pressing F12.
Have we got more questions for that?
Yeah, we've got a couple more. Sorry, I said that Rag had a second question, then just talk shit for 20 minutes, which is basically every single time we get on a call. But yeah, this is true. Confirmed by Lennaert. So second question from Rag is, what's your stance on disclosures to organizations that don't have a dedicated VDP, CDP, BBP, LL Cool J, but the issue discovered was still critical?
My stance on this is generally don't try to attack targets that don't have any of these policies. But if you are buying shoes and you find something, then you're not actively searching it, you found it, then might as well report it. So yeah, I would absolutely try to disclose to them, but if they're not responding at some point, I'm like, okay, you don't want to be secure, I don't care anymore.
Oh, fair enough. We've got two of our speakers from earlier. Well, I say earlier, I meant yesterday. Asking us a few questions. So we've got one from Bushido, which what do you think of POC Friday?
I think you're an absolute
What's your thoughts
dick
on that?
because it makes us work weekends. Don't do it. Don't book your things on Friday. Don't release software on Friday. Just...
No, POC Friday 6 p.m. and then go to the pub.
Yeah,
that's...
and just watch the notifications explode.
Yeah, it's more fun because you can watch it from the pub. It's great.
Or before a bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, I don't watch football, so put the notifications on, screen share, screencast or something to the big TV in the pub, and just do. That's more fun. Hail Nolly actually asked a good question. How do you feel the idea that a security researcher may not know all of the unintended consequences of releasing a zero day to an unresponsive vendor as well?
Yeah, you won't. That's how it works. But what other options do you have?
No, it's fair
yeah,
enough. It's a valid point.
As in,
kind of chicken and egg problem.
Yeah, chicken and egg.
If you don't disclose the 0 day, then it's just going to stay there, which is not really an option either. So yeah, I think that you will have to disclose, and you just kind of have to accept that you don't know everything. I think the bigger risk is in when a vendor is non-responsive and you're going to drop it at some point because you're trying to pressure them. And that's the point where you might not have an idea which organizations use their software or how critical it is, etc., etc. Which is why with Day-to-Day, if we run into a very unresponsive vendor, we'll still try to scan the internet for who are using the product and inform the users just, hey, this product is insecure. Take it offline, put it behind a VPN, firewall it off, do something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you want to quickly drop your screen share so we can actually see your pretty face up in this very pretty screen?
Oh, perfect.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, that's pretty much us. John, I know you're in the audience. Do you have any questions for Lennaert?
No questions anymore. It was a really good one. So thank you, Lennaert.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks, Lennaert.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Listen, Lennaert, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, and have a good rest of the day.
Yeah. All the best. Cheers.